Welcome, Dr. James Beckett, Sports Card Insight. You just have to listen to this episode in its entirety. It's very different. It's purely hypothetical, a little bit crazy. Cage was a good sport, so I don't want to tee it up more than that other than thanking my sponsors, Topps Panini, Upper Deck, Heritage Auctions, Huggins Scott Auctions, Mike Stadium Sports Cards, Burbank Sports Cards, ComC.com, and Beckett Media, Beckett Grading, Beckett Authentication. So here it is. Thanks. Okay, this is completely hypothetical. The NBA has brought in a high-powered consultant, and the NBA consultant tells Adam Silver and the Players Association and the teams, all the licensing, say, you've got Fanatics, they're going to really work with you, but what I see we need to do is this industry of sports cards is so dominated, it's always called baseball card stores and baseball cards. We want it to be basketball. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. Going forward, all basketball cards will be tall boys. And you Fanatics can carry this out. So every basketball card will accentuate the height and athleticism of our globally gifted athletes. We're going to be distributing. They'll know it's basketball cards because they'll be tall boys.
I will argue against that.
Okay, I'll argue in favor of it. Okay, so either way.
Probably easier for you to They can be easy for you to argue in favor. Let's make it easy.
Okay,
I don't want to.
You're arguing. So you are the plaintiff. So you're suing the league for what? We say we're going to do this. What are you going to do?
Injunctive relief, a temporary restraining order, and
Based on what?
Permanent restraining to say that toll boys are actually going to be detrimental to their cause.
Okay.
An invocable harm to do.
Okay. That's way too subtle for a judge who has the idea that cards are cards. I point out that we have the Lou Alcindor, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, one of the most famous cards as a tall boy. No one complains about that. So I'm just saying all the cards going forward are going to be tall boy. And then you'll know it's basketball.
So I like the trying to set it apart. But I think what's amazing about it is I think basketball cards right now are probably the most fun segment anyway. People call them,
but they'd be even more fun if they were bigger.
So we're trying to get future hobbyists in here, right? We're trying to grow the hobby, and I think we could take it for a fact that obviously the people who love basketball cards, and there's a segment who love tall boys, there's a segment who love vintage, but to grow the thing the way we all want it to grow, you want to get new hobby participants because eventually you need that. And one of the things that I love the most about cards, everybody could talk about Bob Ross paintings and video games and sealed Star Wars stuff and posters and whatever else you want to expand to, type ones, you name it. What I love about the cards is the portability, the stackability, and the uniformity. You know what I hate going to a show and having to do? Bringing different boxes for the different size slabs.
You're not making a compelling argument that there's any real harm. You're making an inconvenience argument that as the licensors, we have the right to make some. And
you have a right. I believe the harm is going to be no one's going to buy it.
Then you're saying we're making a mistake.
Correct.
But in court, you have to say you're doing something wrong. We're damaged. So how are you damaged?
You won't be damaged. You can do whatever you want. If we're talking real law, if you want to only make tall boys, go right ahead and make tall boys. The problem is you're going to lose half your buyers, if not more.
What is that based on?
Current, it is. I would have to only base it on anecdotal hobby, what people like and what they don't, right? So yes, Kareem is a great card, right? But I think if you were to tell people right now, hey, I'm going to offer you a tall boy version of the 96 Chrome Kobe Bryant. Would you like that instead of the card you have?
Not instead.
They're not going to do that. Oh, but it's the only thing we can do, right? Just so that we can try to see whether or not somebody would actually enjoy this going forward. Now, sure, if you tell me the only way for me to get a Wemby card is via a tall boy, there's no other option. Sure, yes. People don't want Wemby.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but I know where you're going, and I love it. But I think if you're given the ability, if you put a Wemby regular size card and a Wemby tall boy in front of 100 people, my bet is that less than 1/4 of people are going to pick the tall boy.
Okay,
is that a legal argument that gets me to?
It is not. It is not. But what you're suggesting is that there's a potential class action here. Did a lot of class actions, mostly on the defense side and some on the plaintiff side. But is there a class of people who are damaged here that have a common cause that you would represent?
No.
Because a bunch of them are going to say, a tall boy Wemby, that's great.
Yes, some of them will. If we're talking real questions here, You can't stop Tops, Fanatics, whoever it is, the league, they can do whatever they want. They can say, if you're going to print cards, this is the caveat that I want to have, and it's only tall boys. You're not damaged. It's your choice to buy the card or not buy the card.
Okay, so you're taking off your attorney hat. You're saying, I don't think I have a winning case in court,
Right.
but I might have a groundswell.
A court of public opinion.
But you could bring economic pressure, perhaps, through your social media influence and through galvanizing support to say, we're not going to support this. I think that'd be really hard to say, okay, guys, we're not going to buy any cards. How do you even do that? If you think this is bad for the hobby, how do you stand up and say, hey, Michael Rubin, you've made a lot of good calls. This is not one of them.
By the way, I hope everyone listening to this is reading between the lines pretty heavily of what Dr. Beckett's doing. But anyway, how do you do that? It's very hard, right? Because if there's no way to stop it via law, and we're all just shouting from our little mini soapbox, it's hard to unify the voices. You're right. We speak with our wallets. But ultimately, if we're only given one option and we are lovers of cards, we are going to have to take the option we're given, right?
Not necessarily. Okay, because I'll put a little twist on it now.
I love it.
Let's just say the NBA, that Adam Silver's in favor of it, and the teams, they say, we want basketball to be number one. But the PA, the Players Association, says, you know what? If we don't have the Spurs marks and all that stuff on there, we're going to let Panini just keep doing cards in the standard size. Okay, now you've got a standard and a tall boy Wemby that's got Spurs on it when they do get the license. Now you've got effectively almost cracking the monopoly. Would be interesting. Then you'd see, would Panini unlicensed sell more than Fanatics and Topps licensed? With the tall boy, it'd be an experiment.
If you want to really sprinkle some fun stuff on there, what if one of the companies went to some of the star athletes and signed autograph exclusive deals with them?
Which they're going to do anyway. But they wouldn't have to do it if the Players Association said, we're on board with this, and all future cards are going to be tall boy size, and they're all going to be done by Fanatics. If an individual player wants to opt out of the PA and have a card with Panini and a multi-sport set, but the rank and file Players Association are all going to be only with Topps Fanatics. Now you've got a little more monopolistic stuff. Okay, now Panini can't even do anything. So the sympathy for Topps and Fanatics is not so great if the groundswell, the North American world public says, hey, this isn't fair. We've got one licensee doing something. They're making a radical change that we don't agree. I think the judge is going to say, vote with your dollars.
That's right. So let's take it back to that 09 to 12 period where we were about to lose Exquisite. We're about to lose all of those brands of Upper Deck. And we have the same hypothetical, but in that hypothetical, you call it a monopoly. I don't really hear too many people calling Panini a monopoly just because Topps or no one else could get their stuff in there. But at the time, Upper Deck was making these RPAs.
They're not calling Panini a monopoly. They want to call Fanatics a monopoly.
I know now.
Because the shoe's on the other foot.
Correct. But if we go back in time, Panini was going to come out with Prism. Oh, I don't want Prism, but just like I don't want a tall boy now. We're going to lose Exquisite, and we're going to lose the SP Authentic, and we're going to lose all these. Rookie is in this. How could we allow this new company to come in and make such a drastic change? And we're going to get it. Prism. We're going to get the shiny. We're going to get this chromium card that doesn't even look nice. Now, you fast forward 12 years from that 2012 Prism, and it's being held out as an iconic set, the 2012 print. It's funny, right?
I'm just saying, the Chrome Tall Boys could be a thing in 2026. And we don't know. I'm just saying that if Harvard MBAs come into our industry and say, look, this is the way it ought to be done, you need more brand differentiation, something like that. My other, just to blow your mind, the further step is that after this is announced, football comes up.
Yes.
Says, you know what? We don't like the 2.5 by 3.5 real estate either. And so we're not going with tall boys. We're leaving that to the basketball. We're doing fat boys.
Fat boys.
We're doing 3.5 by 3.5 cards.
Ooh.
Going to be square. They're going to be blocky, but they represent the 7 blocks of granite. This is the iconic football imagery of stout players.
They get a little square.
Exactly. Except they're 3.5 by 3.5. So they're even bigger. So the thought that's premium. And the same consultant says, hey, football, you could do that too. Then nobody's going to say, wonder what cards they're going to say. Those fat boys, that's football. But then now you've got to have different slabs. You got to have different penny sleeves. You got to have different one inches. PSA has to make some accommodations. So does Beckett, SGC, CGC, everybody. 800 count boxes. What does that even mean anymore? But football may say same thing. We don't want to be lumped in with baseball cards. We want our own special size. I think that's a bad idea, but somebody could say we're never going to be thought of as special and different unless we have our own trade dress that's immediately recognizable.
Yeah. Listen, I understand it. And I think the best thing you said here, especially for folks listening, is you got to vote with your dollars, right? And all of it is very interesting, wheel turning, thought provoking. What I would say here to you is every time there's been a change in the hobby, it's been met with skepticism. It's been met with the sky is falling, Chicken Little, Monopoly. I can't believe we're changing. And it's because the people who are here are used to the way that it has been. They've developed a routine. They are comfortable. Do you remember 1982, Jim? Remember 1982 was like a watershed moment. And you know what happened? Topps probably laughed at what 1981, when Fleer and Donruss came out. They were ugly. They were hideous. And people did vote with their money. They didn't really want them. But then all of a sudden, 82, he got some Ripken, still ugly. 83, Donruss. 84. I remember being an 8-year-old kid. And all of a sudden, Donruss, Fleer were the premium brands to Topps. You wanted in 84 the Donruss Mattingly. 85, you wanted the Donruss Gooden. 86, you wanted Canseco, and they started scooping Topps. 86, Fleer had the Canseco with 2 panels on the card. 86, Donruss had Canseco, and 86 didn't even have them in their base set. So you were able to vote with your money, but guess what? It made the products better, and they challenged each other. And I know it's not the same because it was all licensed, and it wasn't a monopoly.
You're looking at the manufacturer. I'm looking at the dealer side. I'm telling you that some of the same people that are poor mouthing, that won't work, don't buy it, vote with your dollars, all that stuff, are secretly buying it. It's like Star Company basketball.
Yeah.
Oh, that's no good. But they stashed it away. And the same thing could happen here. They'd say, oh, you don't want that. It's because then they could buy it cheap and then bring it out when it happens. So there's some very savvy, against the grain, stealth buyers of some of these things that like to talk down something while they're accumulating it. Lower the boom. So
no different than
dollars,
right? There are people who talk down stocks of companies just so that they can buy it. Same kind of thing.
It's the opposite of pump and dump. Make everybody else dump and then you come in.
Yeah, get somebody else to dump it and you pick it up. This is a big splash. Do you view what's going on in the space now with the transition from Panini to Fanatics very differently than you saw in other transitions?
The big thing is that Fanatics is an order of magnitude bigger in the size of their company. That's scaring people that they don't have to have any accountability. I'm throwing out an outrageous scenario here. Right. They could say, hey, we're going to do it. We'd have very little ability unless Panini could still make cards without the logos, which the shoe's on the other foot.
But didn't they pay for that, right? They paid more money for the licensing than anyone's ever paid for.
Well, but the complaint would be they paid more money behind closed doors.
So you're saying the league should be held to a standard where there's an open auction process for their licensing?
No, but the sympathy of any company is that I never had a chance to respond when I was the incumbent.
Right. Well, sometimes
not a sense of fair play, but it's not illegal.
Sometimes you make an offer that's so good you don't have to give somebody another chance.
I agree. Okay, let's go to mediation.
Go to mediation, right?
I'll tell you what. Here's what we'll do. Premium brands are going to be tall boys, and we'll do some popular brands in the standard size. Is that okay for you, Cage?
I think it's perfectly fine.
And what about the fat boys?
Give Fanatics a chance. Like we're really panning it before they even had a chance. Like they don't even have their licenses yet. Look, I'm not an apologist, and we could talk about like the different products and how they've squeezed a lot of dealers out and breakers, and we could talk about any of that you like. But for right now, they spent a lot of money. They're spending a lot of money to get Wemby to sign autographs. They've signed CJ Stroud, and they don't have the licenses yet. What we're viewing right now is a stopgap. There is a period between 25 and 26 when the NBA license and the NFL license are actually theirs, when we have the ability for them to make fully, truly licensed. But guess what? There are rookie classes during this time, and I believe if you look at it in the light most favorable to them, they're doing what they can do. They're trying something. Let's give them a chance.
Except that what I'm getting at is that if Fanatics comes in and says, or any large entity thinks, we can't just have incremental growth. We have to have dramatic growth. Therefore, we could do dramatic, game-changing things. What I'm throwing out there is a game changer that would get a lot of attention, and there'd be a lot of people against it, but I think they'd still be buying. And so I hope they don't do that, because I really prefer incremental growth. It provides a stable foundation as you move forward. If you 10x too quickly, that's a fad.
Let's say they do your tall boy idea, but because it's something they want the community to get behind, they set the price point at a significant discount to what, let's call it, the Panini brand would have charged previously. That's 40% below the prior year's.
I don't think that's what they do. I think they're trying to control is all the different squeeze points in the industry. They're going to talk to their LCS accounts and say, how many do you want to take? And none of them are going to say, I don't want those tall boys. They're going to say, I'll take them. And I'll take the fat boys too. And when you get to Fanatics Live, the breaking platforms, if you don't take the tall boys and the fat boys, that's the pressure they have. And it'll be increasing as they lock in on these licenses long term.
Don't they have to make it palatable to the person who's the end consumer, right? In the beginning, sure, they can squeeze. They can force their breakers and their LCS to take.
That would be their mistake. If they don't keep in mind the end user, this is not a consumable, it's a collectible. There has to be a collectible home for each card. If it becomes a consumer packaged good, we're in trouble because they can drive up the volume, but it's going to drive down the collectability.
I could not have said that better myself.